Hi, everyone. Welcome to Survivor Now podcast. Oh boy, do we got something for you today. We are joined by the very special guest, Austin from Survivor 45.
What's
Austin, thank you so
up?
much for being here with us.
Thank you so much. Super excited to talk to this episode. I feel like we got a good one, so happy to be here for this one.
Yeah, me too. Zan's asked, what are we talking about today? We're talking about episode several of Survivor 46. I love that we got a Jelinski shout out this episode. I thought that was a lot of fun. And Sludge Sports, hello to you as well. Thank you so much for joining the live chat. We're really excited to talk to all of you about today's episode. So once again, if you are joining us live, we do have our live chat open and you can follow along and let us know your thoughts about the episode as well. So let's just get kind of right into it. First of all, Austin, I want to know, what does it feel like to watch the season right after yours aired? Can you believe that it's 45 is already over?
You know, I thought I'd have a harder time watching it back, but it's been so much fun. I mean, I watched it through a little different lens, and I watch things and I'm like, oh, why are they saying this in a confessional? I wonder what's happening behind the scenes here. Why are they showing this shot? Why is this scene being put in? But it's so much fun, especially because they're merging on Nami Beach, which was Reba Beach. So I feel like I'm there. I see them sitting on confessionals and I'm like, I remember that exact spot. I see them looking around for things. I'm like, I remember looking through there too. So it's been a really fun trip. And yeah, I'm super excited.
Yeah, that was the most wild part. I went to Bryson When Presents a few weeks ago and seeing the players watching the challenge happen in a spot, it was Heidi was there, Jam Jam was there, seeing them watching the challenge, knowing that they stood there, that seems like the craziest thing to see. So, I mean, this episode starts out, we got to talk about Venus and Soda. This was really fun to watch because obviously Venus thinks that Soda was the one to write her name. Austin, was there any misunderstandings your season kind of like this? Because I know you had that one where you were able to get away with not voting, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, for the one where I didn't vote, actually, I don't think it showed, but so I didn't vote. That was the one where Caleb did his shot in the dark. And Bruce clocked kind of that someone didn't vote because I wanted, going into that tribal council that everyone put their vote on one person. That way, the majority of votes will be read. Mine will be able to be hidden out and no one would know that I didn't vote. But because the shot in the dark worked, Jeff had to read every single vote. But because it was so shocking, no one was counting the number of votes except Bruce. And after he read all the votes, Bruce was like, he looked back because he was sitting in front of Drew and I. He's like, did he read every vote? And then Drew and I are like, what are you talking about? Is there a missing vote or something? And then Bruce sits and thinks for a while. And he's like, nah, nothing. It's nothing. So it's like, gosh, that could have been really close. He just second guessed himself enough for it not to be an issue. But a vote similar to this, I would say maybe it's when Sifu's name was written down by D. And then there was a whole kind of does D take credit or blame for that? Does J Maya take blame? And that whole battle. So a little bit similar, I would say.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Phil and Ollie, I like that the episode started out like this. The Sifu one is a good callback. I forgot how that all turned out and played out. But in this one, it was Charlie who was sort of hiding behind the vote for a short period of time until all of a sudden he decided to tell Venus, he came clean and said, no, it was really me. It wasn't Soda. I was the one who voted for you. Were you surprised that Charlie did this?
Yeah, I think now the more I think about this, the more similar, I think it is to that Sifu vote, where the only difference was, Sifu, he went in, he thought it was J Maya, and then Venus came in, thought it was Soda. Both of them were wrong, but then in my season, J Maya takes the blame and lets D kind of slide under the radar, and that never comes up again, versus here, Charlie admits to it, which at first my gut reaction was why'd you do that? She doesn't think it's you. You can create more confusion, more chaos, make the cracks even bigger in Nami. Not that that's really necessary. It looks like the cracks are massive anyways. But I don't know. Yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting decision for Charlie. Maybe he's doing that because he wants to keep the door open to work with Venus sometime down the road and wants to like say, hey, I'm super honest. But I think the risks outweigh the reward, but we'll see.
Yeah, I feel like it was pretty apparent to me that there was like so much action at night after tribal, because sometimes you get back to camp, there's like one tiny beat and then it's the next day. Sometimes we don't rejoin our cast until the next day. And this was the first time where I think that the entire first segment of this episode was like at night, because we see, Venus thinking that it's Soda. They go for their walk. You see the Charlie moment, and then you see Q talking to Charlie. I mean, it's like this entire. There's so much action at night, and I think that it's not always like that. So I think that it's pretty fun to see that there is sort of like some trickle over drama from.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, No, you can go.
I was gonna say, I think the first vote with everyone brought together, just so much drama and tension that's created from that. Where it's like, for my season 2, that vote after the Caleb shot in the dark, Jay went home. We were out talking for hours with everybody, being like, "What the heck just happened?" And I'm sure this had a lot of similar kind of reactions to it too.
For sure, yeah. I also think this was the first time we kind of really saw a bad read from Venus, like in the sense of like she's always been very open with her thoughts and feelings, and I feel like for the most part she's kind of actually been spot on when you look at it. And this was the first time she was kind of open and went, "No, it's you. Couldn't have been anyone else." And I was like, come on, Venus. But I think Charlie was smart to kind of fess up, because I think it was the way he did it. I don't think he did it in a malicious way, and I think he did it with the intent of still having that communication with Venus, which I think was smarter for him, even though others didn't think so.
Yeah, others didn't necessarily think so, but I want to hear from some of our viewers in the live chat. Minnows said, "You're not too late. Welcome. This is your first Survivor season you're ever watching, and you just watched all of our previous videos on it to help you through." Minnows, that is the sweetest comment I've ever seen. Thank you so much for viewing. I'm glad we could help you get caught up. Zans wonders if Charlie was pressured into fessing up. That's an interesting take on it. I do wonder. I mean, Austin, you probably know better about the social dynamics on that island, and I guess peer pressure, if that was at play here. And once again, Minnow says, "I was definitely surprised Charlie near immediately fessed up Jelinski Core."
Yeah, I will say, I mean, for what it's worth, it's an edit. Who's to say for sure? But I'd be very surprised if there were people that sort of pressured him into it, because I think that if there was sort of like outside pressure happening back on the beach when Soda and Venus were off of that walk, Q would have intercepted it right there and done that speech beforehand and said, "Hey, this is a bad idea. Let's not fess up," And instead we get this lovely scene right here. Once again, it's still night, and look at Tim; he's sort of just lurking there. But instead we got this scene. So it tells me that at least I think that there was no sort of pressuring. It was just Charlie's sort of conscience being like, "Hey, maybe I should tell Venus," considering two people are having like a sort of pretty explosive fight, on my vote.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think a lot of times too, like the pressure's sort of internal, where it's like, if I don't admit it and it comes out that I did this from some other source, then there's no way she'll ever work with me. So I either have to be the one that tells her, or she just can't find out at all. And it's scary when you go to the route of like, I need to lie and hope everyone else lies, because one slip up by someone else could really cost you the game. So I think that's why he ended up telling her, but who knows?
Yeah, I agree. All I know, I feel like, is it Nui Nui? I think Nui Nui is like, I can tell where they're going from. Also, how do we feel about the name?
Nui Nui. I don't know. Like it'll grow on me, I think. Do they still select the names, or is it given? I forget.
No, the players pick the names.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. What did you all think about Q's reaction to Charlie telling Venus? Because I want to say, I I understand the frustration here. Like I get they everything seems so perfect, right? Like none of the eyes were on Charlie or Q. I mean, none of the eyes really, I don't think any of the eyes are on Q after this. I understood the frustration, but I think Q forgot that this was an opportunity to sort of adapt in the moment. And there's no use harping on what Charlie did or did not do. So I thought, it's just one of those things. It's like that saying, like, the only person you can control is yourself. I think you just have to kind of move forward from this with the strategy. Now, I mean, I think a positive is that eyes are on Charlie as opposed to Q. But I was interested in seeing this reaction because I kind of understood it.
I understood it from Q because we've seen Q do it. Because Q's loved his coaching moments. So I feel like it was just kind of Q being in coach mode, being like, I'm going to tell you all how to do this. And I was like, Q, you do you, Q.
Yeah.
Phil, you're muted.
Thank you. My cat was meowing in the background. Didn't want it to be too distracting. Yeah, I understand Q's confusion, but I also think that he should have gone about it an entirely different way. I think that the way that he decided to handle this is like categorically wrong. And I think that, we'll get there later, but we sort of get the reasoning from Maria talking to Venus later in the episode where she's just saying, hey, look, I don't want to be told how to play my game. I want the flexibility to do what I want. Like, even if you think that someone is doing something wrong, like, give us what Charlie gave us about you, Q, where you give us a confession, you act super chill on the surface and then give us a confessional later that says, what is Charlie doing? He's such an idiot, X, Y, Z. If you really felt that way, give us that. Don't march up to Charlie himself and tell him why he's so stupid, because now, Charlie is incentivized to get you out. And I think that's what we're looking at here.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I agree fully with that. I feel like Q could have used this as an opportunity to even build a relationship more with Charlie, being, hey, like, I'm looking out for you. Like, I don't think you probably should have said that because this is what I think. I'm wondering what you're thinking. Just like bring that up to him. And that could be a way to, further their friendship, their alliance. But instead, yeah, like you said, Charlie's after him now. So I think Q just went about it a really, really bad way. But he's entertaining every scene he's in, so I can't complain.
Literally every scene he's in. And I think to your point, Austin, like, that's the irony. The truth is, like, Q was actually trying to be a friend here. That's the way that I read it. I think that if, someone that he didn't like was making a bad move, he wouldn't step in to tell them. He's telling Charlie because he wants to work with Charlie. But there was just a mismatch in intensity.
Totally agree.
Yeah, the stakes were kind of different for each of them in this moment based on what actually ended up happening. Zans, you say that it was like they showed the light bulb flick on in Charlie to get Q out. You know what, Zans? I like that you're bringing in like the storytelling dynamic of it, like kind of motivating Charlie's reasoning here. I think that's a really great call out. Minnows, you say you can really tell Q is a coach. Jay, I like that you Nui is kind of cutie. That's adorable. So yeah, I thought it was a great energy to kind of get the episode started because it kept me very much engaged. But then we have this sort of like human moment between Ben and Kenzie where Ben has a panic attack, and I think he said something kind of interesting, flashing forward a little bit at Tribal Council, but he said something about like, I think and correct me if I'm wrong here, I think he said something about like everything just kind of felt so negative, like around camp and just in the game and everything. So that's what kind of prompted this reaction. And I liked seeing this moment because it didn't feel forced. It felt very natural to the progression of the story that we were seeing.
Yeah. It's wild seeing someone I like have sort of an episode like this. It's sort of remarked to me what we saw with Jake last season, where Jake was seen stumbling, fainting, and like even from between a screen in your couch, you can sort of understand. You're like, holy crap! Like that is so concerning. And honestly, like the way that he was panting, I'm surprised more people didn't wake up. And like, kudos to Kenzie for being there for him. Does it reap benefits? Absolutely. Is that the reason why she did it? I don't think so at all. And to your point, I think this just felt very human, natural, organic, and unfortunate, but it had a really happy ending.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
more night stuff. They all this business at night. Yeah.
A lot happens at night. That's when people are sleeping. No one's moving around. That's when you can really build some relationships with people. But I think, in the new era and stuff, and like in the newer seasons, I feel like a lot of the audience is forgetting like how hard it is to live out there, because that used to be something that was highlighted in all the earlier seasons, like the difficulties of living out there. So I love that they're including this stuff, because it is really hard, and people regularly have like tough issues and obstacles that they have to go through every single day just to like make it to the next day. So I appreciated them showing that. Yeah,
same. This was such a human element, which I loved, because I love the human elements that when you bring into it. And I think it almost, they're all like, obviously every Survivor player is human. We know this. But I feel like we always see the players. So I always enjoy seeing these moments where we get to see both Ben and Kenzie have their human kind of like that. They're the person, and you see what they're about as well. So it really warmed me to Ben. I was always warm to Kenzie, but as if I wasn't, I would have warmed to Kenzie then as well.
Yeah, it was a great moment socially as a human. Like, it was just good to watch. Minnow says that they found it very interesting how the show chose to edit it into being almost Kenzie centered. I like it. Another clue into the storytelling. I kind of had that vibe too of like, oh, this almost feels like Kenzie is the main character in a way of this. But we also did see, I think, a part of that reason. We can predict what's going to happen in the long term, but another reason is that Kenzie, as we all know, did end up winning one of the individual immunities this episode. Jay says that I think Ben and Kenzie's relationship will be important going forward, because in this episode, it was highlighted, and in the opening monologue in the intro, they showed Kenzie and then Ben. Jay, I think you are correct about that. I definitely have my eyes on them moving forward. Let's see. Okay, Liz also really stood out to me this episode, and I think I just like saw a new side of Liz, because let's face it, I feel like Liz is the person who I've seen the least of in the edit. I could be wrong, there might be one more person, but I feel like Liz is the person I've seen the least from. Did anyone else feel that way about like, oh yeah, Liz, like you're in this?
Yeah, considering she's on my bracketology team, or our rather internal sort of Survivor Now podcast fantasy league. Yeah, I absolutely feel that, because every single week I get very little points from her. However, I think that this episode was very interesting. We got like a little bit of glimpse into sort of what she's thinking strategically, which was nice.
Yeah. Liz has been really interesting, because I think week after week, she kind of climbs up my power rankings of players, because at first, she came on episode 1 being like, oh, I have all this money, I have these businesses, blah, 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 and immediately painted target. But I think every episode since then, she's been going under the radar more and more. And yet, she's in a good position. And at this point, I don't know why anyone would bring her name up. So I think I'm excited to hopefully see a resurgence of her confessionals, to see more what she's thinking, because everything that she has been doing has been really entertaining too. So I'm excited to see more of her, and I think we will, because she's in a good spot.
Yeah, well, that's the crazy thing, and I think because we kind of saw like how she was edited in the first couple of episodes, it was kind of like she has these very early on reasons to be targeted, and I think she's the great example of, all you have to do is get through the first couple of like rounds, and then you can solidify yourself. Because like she has had the least amount of confessionals out of everyone so far. Like I think she was on 11 when I last saw some stats. But we're slowly starting to see more of her, which is interesting. And I think I was one of the people that I was like, Liz is there. Liz is a contestant on Survivor 46. It's great. But now I'm interested to be like, okay, so where's this going with Liz? So, yeah. I do think some of her comments this episode, I was like, oh, she's getting brave. Oh, she's getting brave with some of the things she's doing, though. And I was like, I'm here for it.
Yeah, was it last episode now where she claimed like, oh no, that's this episode. Oh, we'll get there later then, when she like is at tribal council. Okay, I'll save that.
I know what you're talking about, and I thought that was brilliant. So
Yeah.
excited to talk about it as well. Before we get into the immunity challenge, Alan, you said that saying no one will ever win 10 individual challenges makes you think making it into the episode tells you that in 2 to 3 seasons we will have a new challenge goat. Oh, okay. So your hypothesis is they've already filmed 47 and 48. So you think that they put that in the episode because they know that someone's going to win more than 10? That's interesting. I like that idea.
That's a take.
All right.
That is a take.
Immunity challenge. I think first thing we have to discuss is the design of this immunity necklace. I have thoughts, but I want to open it up to the room first.
I personally loved it, but I'm loving the gecko motif seeing throughout the entire season. So I saw little geckos sort of baked in there. It's the bright red. I love the red merge buffs, the red color. I'm into it personally.
I love it. I'd wear that all day, every day. And I also have to think of being someone as from the UK, and we had to endure our individual immunity necklace. That was a choice. I see this and I'm like, stunning.
Yeah. I like it. I think it's nice and sleek. I almost wish it had like a little bit more like bedazzle to it, because I look at like their tribe immunities and I love them. I thought those were way better than my season here. We had like a bird head, which was nice. And the second one was like the neck, which was like, what the heck? So they had an amazing tribe immunity. I would give 45 an edge on our individual immunity, but that's just a personal, maybe biased opinion. But I still like this one.
I'm inclined to also be on your wavelength about this, Austin. That's so funny. I forgot that the bird statue separated in that way.
Yeah.
Got the neck. That's awesome. I was underwhelmed when it was first revealed, but I have to say, seeing it on the players who are wearing it during Tribal Council and after this, I actually really liked it like on the person more than on the stand. But I have to shout out Kelly here, because this is exactly what I thought about when I saw this, which were like these lizards that people used to make in like the late 90s, early 2000s. My sister had one on her backpack zipper. Like, I remember it so vividly. And I know a couple of other fans also pointed this out, but just wanted to shout out Kelly in this moment right here. I want to ask, so in Survivor 45, Austin, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the first season where after the Earn the Merge, they then separated all of you again into 2 groups and did the same twist. That's right?
Yep. That was when we had the pull challenge, which seems like we might be having next episode.
Ollie's excited for that.
I just saw a clip of it in a promo. Anyways.
I mean, I love this challenge too. I thought it was fun. I think the thing that I really enjoyed about, you can't control these things, but I think what made this version of the challenge more interesting in Survivor 45 was that it actually ended up becoming a face-off between Dee and Kelly. So they were on the separate teams, but then it became, okay, who's going to make it for the reward? Whereas this one, Kenzie won immunity for Orange, but then fell off, and then there were 2 other people remaining on the purple side. So I thought that the stakes felt less intense for that moment. I don't know if anyone else felt similarly, but I just had that reaction.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. The stakes are probably not there, at least for like who's going to get put on the jury and who's going to be sort of barred from it. But I was digging this as opposed to the previous iteration, considering, I mean, you saw the flashbacks. A 3-minute endurance challenge is like frustrating for me. This is like, it almost takes away the point of it being an endurance challenge. If it's only going to last like 3 minutes, you know? And this was actually like, it seemed lengthy. I mean, I don't think that we got an exact time, but it certainly was enough for there to be some jibber jabber, some yapping at the challenge. And again, like that's what I remember from like early Survivor that was very fun. People would sort of have these social moments in the endurance challenges. And when there's a 3-minute challenge, how can you edit any fun in when it's really just about like why an endurance challenge was 3 minutes? So I was really, really digging the way that this was edited. They were able to sort of sit on it for a bit and like let it breathe. You got moments from Tim. You got fun and annoying moments from Q, even though I love Q. And I just thought that it was like, I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was fantastic. And there were like a lot of big personality moments, you know?
Yeah.
But I dug the whole thing. I really did.
Totally agree. I think whenever you can have a challenge that brings out the personality of characters, it's like so much better than if it's just like, this is a challenge, let's get through it. Okay, this is the person who's safe, move on. Like this one, you feel like you know more about each of the players from watching it, which is like what I think all challenges should strive to do.
Yeah. It actually made me warm more to Q and Tim. Like, because I've very much kind of been like, they're there. And I'm trying to like be okay with them. But I actually really enjoyed them like during this challenge. It made me think back to my favorite person of all time, Courtney Yates, when she was sat on the snake. And just like those moments, like it made me think of that, which I really enjoyed. And the alphabet game, I just poor Q.
So
everyone was trolling. We all know Charlie was trolling. To be fair, I would have done the same. I'd have sat there and just gone, Florida.
I was going to say, I think the funny part is, I think Charlie was the only one that I believe was trolling. I think everyone else was genuinely trying to like play this game that he's posing, but like it was hilarious. That's what made it so funny, is that it was like so earnest, and then only at the end did you feel like Charlie put in like an intentional troll. But you know, Q is he's a lawful man. He's a lawful man. He set his rules, and they kept breaking them. I mean, come on, guys.
Isabel, I was getting annoyed on behalf of Q. I was like, excuse me, follow the directions. This is very simple, everyone. Austin, I'm curious to know, was there anything your season that happened that was similar to this, where you all tried entertaining each other during these challenges?
Oh, a few times. I mean, there was one times like the ones where you're just like standing somewhere. Like there was the one where we were all kind of like leaning up against this like wall, and we had to hold ourselves up with our arms, and we were there for like, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes or something. In the beginning, we were just all talking to Jeff. We were like, oh, hey, Jeff, you know, Julie's got a crush on you, you know? And then we were talking about that. And like, that was when Jeff had this line like, oh, you know, this is something you do at a carnival. And we're just like, what the heck? Like, what carnival have you been to? So we were just going back and forth about that. But playing games on a challenge, that's next level. You know, that's fun.
It's a game within a game.
Yeah.
I do have to ask this question to the group, because I've been thinking about this a lot since watching this episode. I didn't notice it so much in 45, but I had the realization, does this type of twist right after Earn the Merge undercut Earn the Merge? Because yet again, we're sort of splitting up into different groups that are voting different times. I know that in the Earn the Merge, there is one group that both groups are voting, but one group is safe. But still, there's not, as we discussed last week, there's not a lot of wiggle room for strategy, excuse me. But does this undercut the Earn the Merge? Because this now feels like Earn the Juror.
Yeah, it's too drawn out. It's too much, too many steps to get here and to earn your spot in the jury. And there's just something so cruel, in my opinion, of two people being voted off hours apart. One of them gets to be on the jury and the other one doesn't. I mean, like, that is devastating. I mean, you know, say what you will. I think that like anyone leaving Survivor would be sad, but like, once again, we'll get there. I know, but when Tim is like walking out and like stops in the shadow of the bridge on his way out and just like seems like he stops to like collect himself a little bit. Like, I feel like it has to be like way more emotional for Tim than Soda, because at least Soda gets to have a say in the game still, you know? It's like, and it's so sad. They lost the same game. They went to Tribal the same night. He went home hours before her. It just feels like unnecessarily cruel, in my opinion, like, honestly. So, yes, I do think that there's an undercut there, Mr. Matthew.
Yeah. I think as players, when we were out there, we hated it. Like being like knowing that like, okay, at first only 6 of us are exposed. Now we're in another group of 6. And we have to go within that. I know players like me are typically the ones who are looked at a lot into these moments to be, you know, someone to send home when we become exposed. So I hated it. I was dreading it. Honestly, though, like as a fan now watching it, I almost like it, because it's like once this round ends, the beach is so much smaller, and you start to really get to like understand the characters and get more like it feels way smaller like after this. And now there's only 10 people when there was 13 just like 3 days ago, whatever. So I'm excited to see where the game goes from here.
Yeah, I feel like it helps kind of get them into kind of the end game mindset of, right, I've got to kind of think about these moves. That part, yes. I understand it though, where one person doesn't make the jury and one does. Because we've seen this style of thing happen, like kind of a demerge thing happen so many times in Survivor. We've seen it happen in the new era. We saw it happen in the old era. So I'm never like mad at it, because I think it is a good thing to kind of think about, and I think it does show your skills. I don't know. I'm very indifferent about it.
I just think they should do this type of thing before Earn the Merge. I don't know. Phil, it seems like you agree with that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm like, we've done it before. Like, just do it in pre-jury, where you say, hey, the 3 tribes are all playing in a competition. The bottom 2 tribes are both going to have to vote someone off. Like, that just feels so much more like, I mean, honestly, like everything from, just, I just think it's better. I don't know. Because I do think it's also hard to call it like fair or not fair. I like stop myself from saying that word so much, because at the end of the day, it's all fair. It's all fair enough. Like, I do want to put that out there. I don't want to like be too hyperbolic here. I just feel like it feels bad. Like, I don't know. I'm happy I stopped myself there, because I think sometimes people are like, it's straight up unfair, and it's like, it's all kind of, it's a game, but at the same time, I just think it's like, it just like sucks, it just must suck to go home hours before someone, and like for some reason you just don't get to make jury, and they do. Like, I would be pissed. I would be absolutely pissed.
So what if they did it like when they used to do it? Because they normally did do it around Final 10. That's when they normally used to do it. So how would you feel like if it was in this setting and they did it in Final 10? Technically, both of them are still making the jury because it's Final 10.
I mean, I think I would feel better if both of them either made the jury or both of them either didn't make the jury. That's kind of how I feel about a twist like this. It just I don't really see the why. Like sometimes these things happen where things on Survivor kind of suck, but they're also exciting because it's like kind of part of the sport of it all. To Phil's point, this just kind of it feels a little unnecessary as a viewer. Like, I'm thinking of like Kelly's Blindside, which it sucked because I was a fan of Kelly, but it was so exciting and so instantly iconic for that season, right? It's something that everyone remembers about it. So like, there's like a difference, right? There's like a difference in the stakes of both of those things.
Yeah, I guess I'm happy that you said it, Matt, because that is what I was going to say. I mean, Rob Sessionino did an amazing podcast with Jeff Probst, and he talked about the fact that what they always ask behind the scenes is like, why? And before you get too frustrated about any of the choices they make, to try to think about the why. I'm happy that you brought that up, and I definitely thought about it, and I don't think that I've solved it. So I think that's sort of where I'm at, but I'm sure that there is a why on their end. Whether or not we agree with it is another thing, but I do believe that they have something that they're trying to solve with this. But, it is what it is.
Yeah, it does add a lot of stakes to the challenge. And like y'all have been saying, like when it comes down to, one on purple, one on orange, and they're going head to head, that makes that final moment just so much more intense, like it did with Dee and Kelly. I think it did add to that episode but yeah, I don't know. That's kind of my thought.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should take a very quick commercial break, and then we're going to talk about the winners of the challenge and all the strategy leading up to the double elimination.
My name is Jonah Fielko, and I'm the CEO of Bracketology.tv, fantasy sports for reality television. We offer fantasy games for shows like The Bachelor, Survivor, Big Brother, RuPaul's Drag Race, and counting. You start by creating a community. Within your community, you can create a fantasy league for each show that you want to play fantasy games for. Within the league, you can choose up to 3 of our 4 game types, and our most popular is the Advanced League. Choose a team of contestants, and depending on what they do and say during the episode, that's how your team will gain or lose points each week. We also have elimination-style games like our Confidence Pool. This is where you choose how confident you are that each contestant will survive elimination that week. And we've also got March Madness style brackets. Come back a couple hours after the episode to check your scores and watch you climb the leaderboard. Bracketology is free to play, so grab your friends, your family, your coworkers, and head to bracketology.tv for more info.
And we're back. I forgot to do my bracketology this week. I felt really sad about it. But Ollie, I know you did. And how's everyone else doing in the draft? Let us know in the comments if you are doing the bracketology fantasy league. I want to know how you're doing. Are you going to win? Let us know. There's some cool prizes in there. But we got the winners of this challenge. Ollie, I'm going to ask you. I know you are like the biggest Kenzie fan. Love Kenzie as well. How exciting was it for you to see her be one of the winners of today's challenge?
I don't like Kenzie that. No, I do. I'm not even going to sugarcoat that. Yeah, I was really happy to see Kenzie win, especially because we saw when they did the deleted scene, Kenzie was very much talking like, oh, she didn't really feel like she was going to do that well in this challenge. She's not really someone that thinks she's going to be wearing the necklace. So to win it, I was very excited. I was very happy. Not only just because it meant I got loads of points for my draft, but I was also just happy for her because she's someone I've really rooted for. And I feel like people have underestimated her. Same with Maria. I think both of them very much were no one kind of really looked to them as per se. So to see them kind of do well, it was really great. And I mean, I think both of them have the skills to win this immunity and not let it get them have more of a target. Like they won't, I don't see them suddenly someone sitting there being like, well, they're a physical threat. It's like they won. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was fun to see them both win this. Well deserved, well earned. Someone before, I'm so sorry I didn't get to the comment, but mentioned Survivor 42, I think, where they did a similar challenge and everyone was just flying off of it. So it was fun to see it in calmer waters. I agree, Phil. Like I wish it went I wish it went much longer, just in terms of entertainment value, but absolutely well deserved win. I think we have to talk about the question: did Q throw it?
No.
I don't think so. I mean, this is one of those challenges where it's like, even if you win it, it doesn't paint a huge target on your back, I think. Yeah, I don't buy it.
Yeah, I think it's very, very convenient for him to want to throw a challenge that he dropped out first in. But yeah, I don't know. I also think that there is a possibility. There's always a possibility. But I think that it's I'll tell you this. I think it's fun that Survivor's given us all the information to be one way or another. I mean, yeah, what do you think, Ollie?
No. Just no. Like, we've seen these, so this is one of my top 3 challenges. And if Get a Grip is the next one, I'm absolutely loving my life because that's one of my other favorite ones.
Ooh.
I'm loving my life with them. This is one of those where I saw this challenge and straight away I said to myself, Q's not winning. Because I'd like, just with Q's background and actually I was clocking it straight away. I was like, Q's not able to get a balance on this. And it's very hard to get a balance on that. Like, it's in the water. So naturally for people who aren't used to kind of the balancing sort of things, like we saw with Soda, like we saw with Ben, you're going to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So no Q. No.
Yeah, I feel like it's sort of this thing where he went up there. He's like, I don't know if I can win this. So when he started losing balance, he was like, okay, I'm just going to whatever. So like maybe at the last second he jumped in before he needed to, but I don't think he was going to win, like you said.
That's exactly my thought, is as he was falling/jumping, he decided I'm throwing it, which, I feel like when you go to throw a challenge, typically it's like, wouldn't you stay on until like you're like, oh no, I think I'm about to win this and I'm not supposed to. Like, that's kind of like my idea of what throwing a challenge is. But yeah, I mean, I just thought it was funny the way they edited it too. I think the entire fan base was like, okay. So let's do some strategy talk. So we got to talk about Venus, right? Like, I think Venus was a common through line. This was purple group?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, Venus is like enemy number one. I feel like her name always comes up these past couple of weeks, but I really enjoyed. I like seeing these players start to like take control and start steering the ship how they want it to go, especially Tevin Minnows. I know that you were excited to see Tevin playing this episode. Oh, and that was you who mentioned Survivor 42. Okay, cool. This was really fun to watch, but I only want to spend a brief moment here because I really want to talk about the conversation between Maria and Venus as well.
Yeah. I mean, this conversation to sort of get the ball rolling is really interesting because we know how, like a pinball, how many places it's sort of like bopped around to get to the ultimate decision, or at least what we saw, the edited sort of episode. Yeah, it's really fun to sort of see people start to really play hard. And I think that on this tribe especially, frankly, on both tribes, like it's interesting because you had such like an organic, easy vote for both. And it seemed like, look, I mean, I think we probably could have called it knowing that Nami did not get along at all. But both tribes went with like a sort of, around the corner and back sort of plan, and it was fun. I like those things. Like, this is not an insult. I actually like that we had something not so obvious and that everyone was not on the same page to sort of start things off.
Yeah. I think this conversation is kind of what got me sold that like Liz is actually playing a good game now, which I mean, like she's working with Tevin now, and Tevin was the one who first brought her name up like day one when she started talking about how she had all these businesses and stuff, and now they're working together. And we'll get to it later, but like with the results of this tribal council, I think Tevin needs Liz more than ever. So this is the conversation where I was like, okay, there, she's in a good spot.
Yeah, it was interesting because I think everyone kind of pinned Venus as this number one threat, and then kind of people were almost using the strategy that Venus wanted to use, which was just have a shield. And I feel like people have kind of recognized Venus is going to be a shield for them because she isn't afraid to be outspoken like some of them don't want to be. Whereas she's happy to call people out on it, which I think is fair. Now, do I think Soda was the right person to go for some people? I'm going to say no. For some of them, yes. For one person in particular, no. I was very intrigued to understand why that was the move for someone.
I agree. I was surprised that Soda was the target of this tribal council, or that, as of now, we know what ends up happening. But it was surprising. I mean, we do see like Venus is also trying to steer the ship as well and approaches Maria, who like Maria doesn't give her like a solid like, yes, I'm working with you. And Venus calls it out and is like, okay, so you're not working with me. Like Austin, as someone who played the game, like, is it? I appreciated that Venus just sort of like said what she was hearing in the sense of like, okay, you don't want to work with me. Okay. Like, I get it. But like, did you get the sense that Maria is really still trying to keep her options open at this point? And therefore Venus saying, okay, so you're not working with me was sort of like, shutting down that bridge in a sense. I know my question doesn't make that much sense.
I think so. When Maria was a little hesitant sounding and Venus called her out, I thought Venus's mind was in the right spot, because like when you tell someone a plan, you want to work with them, you want them to be like, oh yes, I'm all aboard. You don't want them to be like, let me think about it, whatever. Because then you're just like, okay, they're going to talk with other people. My plan that I just told you is probably going to be shared with other people. And it gets really scary. And I think Venus just got a little paranoid at that moment, maybe freaked out, and then said her thoughts when she should have kept it to herself and tried working through it. But I think she had the right read, and she knew that I think Maria was likely wanting to work with Tevin and other people, and which Maria did. I also respected a lot, like Maria sitting Venus down and telling her exactly why, she was hesitant and stuff like that. I think that was great for building a potential path for them working together later, even though they seem to be at ends with each other. Like the fact that they could have this serious, genuine conversation of like where they're telling each other truthful things, I think could be built upon in the future if they choose to.
Yeah, I fully agree. I do think that like would probably go back to what I said about Q in the beginning when it comes to Venus here as well, which is just because you catch something and you think something, you do not need to let the person that you're talking to know that you think that. She could have sat there and been like, oh crap, Maria is very clearly not like fully with me. She's being, sort of on the fence about things, wishy-washy. Let me take that mental note, go somewhere and do something about it, or let me go find a producer and chat in a confessional. I mean, the last thing that you're supposed to do is let the person right across from you know that you're that you know that they don't trust you, because then you don't trust them, and then it becomes this paradox that like it's so hard to break out of. And I don't blame Maria. And I think another thing is, and look, and this is just sort of how sort of my culture, how I was raised. I think that like your senior and your junior, just the dynamics of that matter. And I think that once again, I don't want to make too many crazy leaps of assumption on Maria's culture and her background, but I think that was a big deal to Maria. I think Maria literally said in her confession, she goes, like, Venus, you're 20 years old. Like, don't talk to me like you know what I'm thinking. Don't try to like tell me what to do with my game. I'm a grown woman, multiple kids, a husband, a life. You are a 20-year-old young woman just getting your start. Please. I think she was a little offended by that, and I think that, granted, I'm in my 20s now, so it might be hard to think, but it's like, I don't know, if for some reason I ended up on an island and some 13-year-old kid is telling me what to do and barking at me, I'd probably say the same thing. I'd be like, kid, who do you think you are? I'm not working with you, so I think it was a mix of like a lot of things, to be completely honest, but none of them sort of rallied in Venus's favor here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like there was a lot of kind of assumptions from both sides, and we almost kind of had this like reflexive loop happening where like just it was all going on and it was just going around in circles. And it's very clear that both of these people, like Venus and Maria, aren't going to be the closest. And I think it's the thing of like Maria has her game that I can see how she wants to play. She wants to be loyal to the plus ones. She wants to kind of have this thing with Charlie. She doesn't see Venus in her game. Whereas Venus is very much, I want to see what I can do with everyone. And because there's that thing happening, it's just this circle of like, just cut it. Stop trying. Move on.
I don't know. I'm sort of in the fence that like, I feel like it's important not to burn bridges if you do not have to. And I feel like the only time you have to is when you're writing someone's name on a parchment of paper. So I actually did appreciate that they had this conversation, because I think Maria was open. I think it depends on how Venus is going to take this, because if I appreciated that Maria was being open about how she was honestly feeling about the whole interaction with Venus. So as long as that can be like a starting point to sort of mending things, then great. But as we've seen, sometimes it's a lot more complicated than that, especially when the game is related. We'll see what happens next week. Speaking of next week, Zans, you said, can I mention stuff in next week's preview? If it's in the preview, I'm okay with as long as you haven't seen any spoilers, I'm okay with sort of trying to figure out what's going to happen next. Thank you for asking that question. As always, we don't like spoilers on here. None of us are spoiled. So thanks for asking that. I appreciate it. Yeah, Phil.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to bring in one thing for the last thing that you said, but honestly, I let it leave my head, so it's okay.
Sorry.
Let's move along. No, it's fine. Let's keep chugging.
Flaria says no showmance this season. Austin, you were in an important showmance with the turkey sandwich, as we all.
Yes, exactly. And don't forget the fish eyes. Don't forget the fish eyes.
That's
and
true.
The fish eyes.
Yeah.
By the way, you said it was like sushimi on the show.
Yeah, it really wasn't that bad. I think the texture was bad, but the actual flavor didn't have too much. It was like a little salty, but it was just like gooey and drippy and really chewy.
Yeah, but that turkey sandwich was the one that got away.
Yeah. Oh. Man, it's okay. I've had so many sandwiches since then.
Good. Just to make up for it.
Yeah.
Charlie. Okay. So, I mean, this image has been all over the internet. It's an instant meme, like it's an instant Survivor meme. I can already see this being sent in group chats, or like when something happens next season, someone's going to send this image of Charlie reacting. What's going on here? Does anyone remember where this happened in the episode?
This was just when like everyone was kind of at the beach, kind of just chilling and stuff, and you've just got Charlie in the background being like, what is going on? Someone please just let me know what's going on. It came across like such a throwaway moment, but the Survivor fandom are going to clock something and just be like a meme.
So funny. So funny.
I love it. I think, Austin, did anyone get any screen grabs of you from 45 that have been circulating?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to think if there's any one in particular that's been the most, but I definitely have some that I see. Episode 1 I had a lot because of course I found the idol like in my underwear. There's quite a few from that one. Got some screen grabs of there's one where I'm in front of this puzzle that I'm trying to solve, that like the one that says like a persistence puzzle, whatever. I forget what it was for my season. Resourcefulness. And I didn't realize that it had to spell the same word on the back. So I'm like sitting there super confused why I didn't win. And I'm just like standing looking like this. And then the back of it just spells the most nonsensical word of all time. That's probably my version of this.
That's hilarious.
That is, I'm so glad I totally forgot about that, but I do love it. Yeah, that is a great image. So we then see sort of like Q's game. That's what I'm just gonna like label this sort of segment as, because it really does, and he even mentions it at some point. I forget who he's referencing, but basically saying like, he said about someone, he said like, are you in this, or are you?
It was for Tim, and he said, are you playing Sega game or are you playing Q's game? As if that is like the binary choice. This is fun. This was fun. Again, I love this tribe. It's like they sort of went in here, and the option that you thought, which would have been probably Ben, was not ultimately the choice, and we ended up being in a place where it was like, okay, Hunter or Tim, and it was like, wait, what? Like, how did we get here? But I also do think that like, and again, like I want to give a lot of credit to Tim for this entire episode. And it's not just because he was on my fantasy team. It is because I think that we got a lot of his personality this episode, which we haven't gotten for a lot of the show. I mean, it's been, very crowded. I mean, the first few episodes, we got a lot of Banu. There was no room for Tim. There was too much Banu. But for Tim, it's like, I think he's such a fun personality. And I do think that this episode showed that despite his like chill, laid back demeanor, he actually was here to play. And I think that like, he was not going to let a plan sort of, go through without him being fully okay with it. And though I do think that he made bad moves this episode that led to him going home, I actually think that he sort of showed himself to be more of a player that I think a lot of people saw him as, because we didn't really see his original tribe too much.
Yeah.
So,
I don't have an image of Tim, but it's such a juxtaposition with how we were talking about his game last week, because I think we talked about sort of his reactiveness to a lot of the stuff that was happening, whether it was with that 6-person alliance and not informing Maria. And I agreed with you, Phil. I thought this was a really great Tim episode, but he ended up leaving. So here's the deal, everyone. So I'm about to get voted out of this live stream. So I know. Blindside of the week. So I'm going to toss it over to Phil to guide us through the rest of this episode. Austin, it was a pleasure meeting you. And everyone, I will see you all next week as well for the next episode.
Matt, the tribe has spoken. Alrighty. Let's keep going here. We see Hunter and Q having their chat here, and I believe this is when Hunter asks, "Hey, is my name being floated around?" And Q keeps it real with him. He says, "Yes, it is." What's your thought here, Austin? I mean, would you be feeling nervous if you found out, hey, your name's floating around on this temporary tribe?
Oh, of course I'd be nervous. And this is sort of the vote when you're split into the 6-6 groups, where players like Hunter should feel the most nervous, because A, he's exposed, and B, everyone knows he's a threat. And why not take a big shot at a big threat here when you don't have to get permission from, 6 other people? You just need permission from 3 other, So I think, I'd be terrified. I also want to go back a little bit to what you all were saying about Tim. I agree. Like, I think he had a good episode in the sense that we could really see that he was here to play and that he had good shot. I think he went about getting his strategy to go through in like probably the worst way possible, because like, one, he went straight to, the +1 alliance member, Q, even though Q is in an alliance with Hunter and Tim. So what does that tell Q when you're immediately wanting to throw one of this alliance member under the bus that like, and like Q really values this alliance. Like Tim should have a better read on like, okay, if I want to make this plan go first, like go through, like who should I talk to first? It probably shouldn't be Q. And then not only did he bring up Hunter to Q, which, Q wanted to work with, but I think he brought it up and said things in like a way that offended Q. Like, Tim was like, oh, none of us are going to beat Hunter in a challenge. Like, you think you're going to take him on a challenge? And Q's like visibly upset. He's like, what? Like, he has this confessional where he's like, so yeah, Tim's worried about Hunter because he's like the most physical person here. And then he like looks at the camera. He's like, debatable, like, it's so funny. Like, not only did Tim go to the wrong person, but he hit the wrong.
He bruised the ego.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ollie.
No, I just wanted to build off that because I agree with a lot of what you said there, Austin. I also think Tim really kind of showed his cards to the wrong person, because it's very much like, and he was trying to deflect of saying he wanted Hunter gone because he's a Nami, but he's also in the +1 alliance. But also, he has shown in the last 2 episodes he doesn't want to get a Sega person out. So it's kind of like I'm sat there going like, I think Q and Tim were playing very similar games, but in the sense of Q had his plan, Tim had his plan, and they just did not align. And Q just had a bad time hiding that. Yeah. I think that's where it was the issue here. What were we talking about here again?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I think it's a great call out, Ollie. I think that he sort of like gave Q too much. Frankly, he gave Q everything he needed to completely squander his plan, to be completely honest. And again, like, it's one of those things where I think that the person, I mean, oftentimes the person with the most information is gonna sort of net out. And obviously numbers also matter. And in this case, Q had all the information and more numbers, and it was just it's hard to sort of that's a hard one to conquer. And I think that thinking back, obviously, like if Tim sort of had all the info there and he knew that Q was absolutely not going to vote off Hunter and he was barking up the wrong tree with that idea, he could have maybe said, oh, okay, fine, let's go, Ben. Go over to Ben and say, hey, Ben, me and you have to vote Hunter. We got to sort of find, a way to have them split their votes so we could possibly at least be 2-2-2, get something sort of going. And instead he put himself on the line, which is so ironic. Yeah. He was not even in the conversation. I think that it was, it was like, oh, is it going to be Ben or is it going to be, I think it was just going to be Ben, but really anyone else, it was going to be Hunter. That's who Ben was going to vote for. But instead it ended up being Tim and Hunter because Tim sort of gave himself away a little too much. But let's sort of talk about the flip-flopping of Q. Because after the conversation with Tim, Q no longer wanted Ben. Q was starting to think of him as a viable option. And I'm not sure if this screenshot specifically is before or after he talked to Ben, but we could also touch on that. He had a little conversation with Ben where Ben was a lot less pushy. And he was a little bit more like, hey, look, man, like, you can put your votes on me. I can be the decoy. I'm just letting you know that I think I'm going to vote for Hunter. And was less about telling Q what he should do. What do we think about that conversation?
I didn't mind it because I think like Ben was kind of like putting himself out on the line, and I think he said it best. It was like there's no risk without like more risk, no reward, more whatever it was. But basically, he was like, I'm willing to kind of risk my game. And if this doesn't work, it doesn't work. At least I can say I went out swinging. And I feel like it was kind of like, again, I think the reason why it kind of looked bad on Q was because Q has this very specific idea of how the game is, how he's meant to play the game and how almost everyone else is meant to play the game. So when someone does something like that, like Q just gets in his head of X, Y, this is why X, Y, and Z, then this is the case. So I think that's why it was a struggle to kind of see Q's thought process during this point and why it came across so flip-floppy. Because I think if I was in that position, I would sit there and kind of like the girls did look at Q and be like, boy, no.
100%. I think those are the moments where you can make or break an alliance, right? Like when Q's flipping back and forth, he should have just, gone to Kenzie and Tiffany and be like, these are the facts. This is why I'm thinking maybe Ben. This is why I'm thinking maybe Tim. Like, what do you all think? And just like having that dialogue would have avoided all of this like confusion and like anger from Kenzie and Tiffany being like, why do you keep flip-flopping? You just explain the reasons why and help them come up with a decision with you. And everyone's better off because you're still going to get one of your targets out. You're clearly fine with either of them going home. Like, why do you have to be so adamant and so aggressive and make your rest of your alliance like flip and flop with you when you could just be working with them?
I think it's sorry.
I just think this comment from Zan sort of sums it up perfectly. Q is playing 4D checkers. Yeah. He is overcomplicating something that does not need to be this complicated. And to your point, Austin, like going back to your alliance members in such a sort of like frantic state, like do that on your own and then go to bed and say, hey, this is what I've got. We got to make a decision. What do we think? Or even go there with your best thought. But I think going there and being like, here, this, that, the next thing, and, sort of having a bit of a back and forth with Tiff specifically, where it doesn't really doesn't come across too well. What are you thinking there, Ali?
Well, that's the thing. I think even with that specific conversation, when he was talking to Tiffany and Kenzie, he wasn't. I don't think he was actually like listening. Yeah, that was my reaction. I just don't think he was listening to them, and I think he had his he wasn't listening to the reasons. He just wanted to know who they were voting for. And Tiffany and Kenzie were having the conversations. They were doing the kind of pros and cons like you should do. So whenever they gave a pro or they gave a con, it was almost like Q just wanted to know, so we're doing this. So then it's this person. And it's like, no. We're discussing as a group. We're getting all of our information so we can make the best decision. And it was almost like Q didn't want that. Q had his opinions and it was almost like he's had his thoughts. So any extra to him, it looks like it's overcomplicating when actually they're having their voice be heard as well. But it knows.
All I can definitely say is having the remainder of your alliance sort of look like this while you are not a part of a conversation is probably not a good thing. I think both Tiff and Kenzie were a little bit over Q's paranoia, if you ask me. But what did you think, Austin? And what did you think about their choice to sort of still ride with him despite sort of behind the scenes being like, okay, we're getting a little annoyed with this guy?
I think it made sense for them, obviously, here to agree and, make Q feel like, okay, we're going with your plan, whatever, because they've seen what happens when someone shows that they can think for themselves, that they have strategy that's outside of what Q wants. Q will turn on them. So I think it is smart for them because if I were them, I'd be like, okay, does it really matter who goes home between Ben and Tim? Like maybe a little bit, but either way, it's a number that's against us. We should knock them out either way. For me, it's like, it's not worth the social capital and the risk of causing this conflict by disagreeing when both options are fine, but it's something to keep in mind later on. And I think they might turn on Q before Q realizes it because they just keep agreeing to what he wants to do.
That's a great point, Austin. And I'm like right there with you. That's what we were talking about before, right? They're not giving him the information to know that, like, hey, they're on the fringes with you, buddy. But Q doesn't realize this because as far as Q knows, it's like, oh, well, they're still going with the plan. Like, it's a three. You know what I mean? That's how you will be able to sort of strike without being struck first. From here, we finally get, decisions sort of being locked in. However, going into these tribals, did you all think the results that we ended up with were going to happen, or were you sort of still up in the air about what was going to happen?
I think they did a good job at giving us 2 options from each tribe. I think they were I think they did. I also, just side note, I really liked how they gave us kind of the Nui side of things, and then they gave us the old Sega camp like discussions. I liked that we had that block and then that block. It was just, it was very like nice and organized, which I really appreciated. I was like, okay, we see what this is happening. We see what this is happening. Perfect. But yeah, I think they did a really good job at kind of giving us 2 options. Like we knew potentially Ben or Tim. Over here, Soda or Venus. So we had the options, and I think they did a really good job at, like, we can see what could happen, but yeah, I think they did a good job.
Yeah, I thought it was also pretty interesting with these tribal councils where like both of them had one clear person who should have been on the outs, like Hunter for this one and then Charlie for the other one. But the main stories were not about either of them because both sides were so fractured and had their own little dilemmas that the choice became 2 people like who I guess were more so in the numbers than the most obvious pick.
Well, look, we're here now. Let's start talking about tribal. What did we think about the bunch that ended up on Old Sega? What did we think about this tribal? Any early thoughts?
Yanu's having a lovely time.
They're everywhere together. They're just being, you know, this vote, the last vote, you know, obviously all the votes before that one.
Oh,
but
yeah, and I do want to call out just the grouping really quick. It's really interesting. This is everyone who won the initial Mergatory challenge.
Yeah.
And then on the other tribe, it's everyone who lost the initial Mergatory plus Tevin.
Yeah.
So Tevin is the only person to have gotten Mergatory Feast and this reward, but it did seem like the losers got their version of the Mergatory Feast here.
Yeah. You know, I would say, like, I feel like when you're out there and there's a person who's getting all the feasts, people notice and they get, like, you know, unconsciously annoyed. They're like, what the heck? This is not fair. But the fact that everyone now is eaten, I think, makes that way less threatening.
Okay.
Like, you know, for my season, like, by the time we hit the auction, a couple people had not eaten anything yet, really. Emily and Kelly. So as a group, we were like, okay, we let them bid first, get their food, and then the rest of us could bid. Because, like, if you're bidding on, like, your 4th meal when someone has had none, I mean, I would want to vote you out. So I could definitely see that coming into play. You know, like, I'm curious to see who ends up getting all the rewards and eating it, and I wonder if that'll ever come into play. But yeah, that was interesting. I didn't realize that it was a perfect split.
Yeah. I mean, it really only called out to me when you know we were referencing like, hey, like Yanu has like always stuck together since they've sort of gotten to this. So you know, mergatory, whatever you want to call it, since they've gotten to this sort of state of the game. Sort of going into this tribal. What did we think, Ollie? What were your early thoughts here?
I liked this tribal. I think Tim was making it very obvious that he was going for, like, Tim and Ben were basically being like, Hunter, mate, we're going for you. And I think, like, Hunter was then like, okay, well, I'm going to very clearly be like, I'm going for you. And there was this open dialogue of everyone knows who's going who, and kind of that, once again, everyone's being very open and honest that Yanu are in the middle. And I think, I do think that Kenzie and Tiffany did a really good job with mitigating that. And kind of like making sure that, like, yes, we're in the middle, but, you know, this is just this example. I also think this was a really good, like, again, I love her, but this was a really good tribal for Kenzie.
Yes.
Like, Q gave her flowers. Ben gave her flowers. Jeff Probst probably gave her flowers. Like, the other tribe were probably coming in being like, great. Yeah, I thought this was a really good night for Kenzie. Like, again, Kenzie was just getting good edit. And I was there like,
it's a really good edit.
Yeah. I and you know, that's a really good point, Ollie. And I think that it sort of spins me to a question that I think would probably be best answered by you, Austin. And that's that, you know, granted, we're still doing this 6-6 sort of split pods tribal here. So it's still not there's not everyone together here. But this is, you know, between this and the next one, the first tribals where someone is wearing an individual immunity necklace. Being at your first sort of merged tribal and having that necklace, being able to have the comfort of being able to be yourself, you have the flexibility. You know you're not going home. Because I feel like we got like quintessential Kenzie here. We didn't get like a nervous version of Kenzie where she felt like she was on the out. She had to say these certain things. She was able to walk into this first tribal and have this necklace where she's cool, calm, and collected. Not to mention, she's done this before.
Yeah,
you know,
that's another big thing where some people
Yeah.
are coming in for their second time, whatever. It's scary going in tribal, but at this point, she's calloused. She's got an idol. Like, she is so safe. And like, yeah, you know, the mindset she's in is like so much clearer than, you know, anyone from Siga or even Hunter, you know, like they're probably thinking about a million things. They're like, I can't say this. I have to say this. I can't say this. She can do whatever she wants to do, you know, and she's used to it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking. And sort of to spin it over to the opposite here, this is Hunter's first tribal where he's voting. This guy literally has not voted for anyone yet. And I think that that can be spin as a positive or a negative, but I want to sort of get you guys' thoughts on the back and forth between Hunter and Tim, because I think this was a really big highlight for Tim where Hunter called out almost in a jokey manner where he was like, I still haven't had to put my sort of thumb on the scale. And, you know, I'm like the fourth Yanu. And Tim was like really serious about it and was like, yeah, guys, like he has had such an easy ride. He has not even had to put sort of any weight anywhere. He hasn't had to throw his weight one way or another. Like, what an easy trot he's had. You know, why don't we, I think, try to put a target on him? I mean, what do you think about that back and forth?
I mean, I think it was when you're at tribal council and your back is against the wall, you're trying to find any sort of crack and opening, and you're trying to just like make it as wide as possible. So I respect both of them for willing to take swings at each other, knowing that they're both on the line right there. But, you know, I also think with it being sort of like 6 and 6, like this is a special tribal where like when you could say stuff and do things that aren't necessarily going to be seen by everyone else. So you can make extra big whips at people and like not worry about the repercussions as much as if you say it in front of all 13 people. But yeah, no, I thought it was good on both of them to fight for their lives like that.
It was really good to see them fight and stuff. And I think both of them did make really good points. I think Tim did a really good job at kind of putting that target on Hunter. I just think, unfortunately, he was never able to convince like the other three, whereas Hunter was able to expose Tim in a way where Tim couldn't really hide it. No matter how much he tried, he had already kind of made it obvious whereas Lloyd was did. So I think that's why it was a little bit better for Hunter than Tim.
Yeah. And I guess one more thing I'd say is like once you're at tribal, the amount that you have to do to switch someone's vote when they're sitting at tribal is immense. Like I don't think in our season any vote except maybe the one final 5 vote was changed at tribal council. Besides that, you go in, you have an idea, and no matter what people say, it's not going to change you most of the time. So you have to really say something convincing and powerful. So
that's a really good point. And, you know, unfortunately, here's Kenzie getting her flowers.
And her buff bow.
The buff bow, first of all, loving it. I actually watched this episode with someone who had never seen the season at all. There you go, Ollie. And he was like, this woman keeps changing her hair every scene. And I go, it's ironic because she's a hairstylist. So I was like, she's sort of doing great marketing here. At the end of the day, Mr. Tim left. It was very sad to see. Again, I sort of want to call out one more time, like they sort of showed him walking down the path that we see all eliminated players walk down. But he like stopped in a shadowy area and you saw him stop there for just like, 3 to 5 seconds. And, I think that he was just like, okay, this is a place where the cameras really can't see me too well. Let me have this be my space where I sort of collect myself. And it was like really sad for me to watch because again, he's not going to, be able to, oh, you're voted off, but you're on the jury. He is our last pre-juror wildly enough. Any last words?
What's up, Jeff?
What's up, Jeff? There we go. What's up, Tim?
There we go.
Then we get to our next tribal, which unfortunately we don't have too many photos for, but let's talk
sorry, I
through.
couldn't find any. Sorry, I
Um,
struggled finding some.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Let's talk this one through. This tribal was also full of a little bit of excitement and definitely some polarizing opinions on whose plan was enacted, which I do think is the biggest conversation. At the end of the day, we do know that Soda went home. Whose plan was this?
I think that is gonna come up and explode next episode. I think people are gonna be fighting for credit. I think people all think that they have, like, they should be the one credit for it. Like, I think obviously Venus and Tevin both think that they deserve credit for this, but I can also see a world where Charlie thinks that he deserves credit for this. I mean, he was at the very bottom. Like, he should, by all accounts, have been voted out, yet he was able to slither out through this. Like, why should he not get any credit for the moves that he did? So I could see this being a really, like, heavily contested who gets credit. But in, like, you don't want to take credit yet. You want to take credit at Final Tribal. You don't want people to think that you're an idiot up until then. But, like, if you go and you start claiming credit for moves, you're not going to make it to the end. And I think the fact that the producers are showing this, like, you know, Tevin's face, like, obviously upset when Venus takes credit for it, like, I really think that this is going to become an issue. And I could see Venus and Tevin coming for each other. And the winner of that will be able to then take credit, and then they'll get voted out too, because they'll, like, have two moves on their resume. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm thinking this is going. But
yeah, no, I completely agree. But I also have the take that Tevin lost credibility for the move when he voted with Soda and voted for Venus. Only because I think he did. I think he did make the plan, but I think he's going to struggle with is the fact that he voted for Venus. So when he goes back and says, "I voted, like, this was my move," people will sit there and go, "Well, who did you vote for?" And if he sits there and go Venus, it will be that he'll have to deal with that already. He'll have to deal with that blockade of, okay, well, how can you claim it's your move when you didn't vote in that move?
Yeah. I think the devil's advocate to that would be, well, who got Charlie and Maria to vote that way? Because there are confessionals from Maria saying, I want to work with Tevin.
Yeah.
I don't want to work with Venus. And there's a confessional from Charlie saying, I will do whatever Maria does. So if that's the sort of, you know, line of transitive property that we're going to sort of walk through, it would be a Tevin vote. Or rather, it would be to Tevin's credit.
Yeah. I'm leaning more to it being Tevin's credit. And I think, you know, him voting Venus, he could explain it being like, oh, you know, just in case a shot in the dark was played by Soda, and then they could be a revote, and I was worried it'd be me or something. I could catch a ricochet. But yeah, I think from the edit, it seems like Tevin is more in charge of this.
Yeah, it's sort of just sort of just a last thing here, and then we will go into some social media, some fun social media stuff. I just have a question for you, Austin, because you know, we can bring up old times here, but once upon a time, you were in a Final Tribal where you believed that something was to your credit, and D was able to sort of sweep up and say, that is to my credit. And sort of hearing what you're talking about, where it's like, when is the best time to take credit? Would it be right after this? Would it be to, you know, to sort of figure out where people are landing so you at least know what to go into Final Tribal fighting? Or, you know, should you risk going to Final Tribal, bringing it up there, and having someone be like, no, you didn't. And it's sort of too late in the game for you to go back and do the measurements.
Yeah.
What's your thought on that?
Yeah, no, I think the worst time to bring it up is right after. I mean, that's when, like, the iron's hot, and when people are trying to find any reason to vote someone out, they can be like, this person just pulled off this great move. Who knows what they're going to do next? Like, let's vote them out now. And I think that kind of came up in my season too, where after the Bruce vote, you know, Emily took a lot of credit for that and was like, oh, I did this. And no one really saw her as this huge threat. We were like, oh, you know, she was on Lulu. We know she was hard to work with. Like, people didn't like her, blah, blah, blah. Like, we had no idea what happened pre-merge with her. We didn't know she was playing such a good game. And then when she, you know, went from being at the bottom of Lulu to running a big move to get Bruce out and taking credit for it, everyone was just like, oh my gosh, she's dangerous. So that could definitely happen here. And I think really the best thing to do is just hold everything as much as you can to heart until final tribal council. Obviously, the one risk of that is like by the time you get to final tribal, if no one thinks that you've done any moves and you haven't taken credit for anything, they've had 2 weeks sitting on the jury bench up to have that story form in their head. And it's really hard to shift someone in like a 2-3 hour final tribal, a belief that they had for 2 weeks. So there's maybe a middle ground. I don't think you say it in the beginning. I still lean towards saving the final tribal, but there are definitely risks no matter what.
There we go. Well, Ali, I will let you take lead here. Social media, this is your jam.
Wait, are we not giving Soda her flowers?
Oh my gosh, apologies. That's right. Soda is the one voted off here. Any final words? Ali, please.
I love Soda. She was on my draft. So she is the first person to leave my draft, which is very sad. But I do get for the Survivor Now draft, I do get to say that at least all of my draft have made the jury. So I do have that distinction. I loved Soda. I think she was really authentic. I think, again, like I said, I don't think this was the best move for Tevin. And I think we will come back to that, could come back to bite him. But I think Soda was very authentic. I think she was a very big champion for everyone. So I want to give her flowers on that, because she was always the one that even if she lost, she made sure the other people had their congratulatory moments. So I appreciate her on that one.
Yeah, I think she's a great person. I think she might have gotten a little hurt by the edit. You know, the whole like idol snatching saga was hilarious. I don't think that she did that maliciously at all. And like the way she exited the game, you know, giving a big hug, congratulating Venus, all these things, like that shows a lot of character. And I think, you know, she's a great person.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you, Ali, for sort of walking us back here to give sort of her flowers, because that is actually something that I did want to bring up. The fact that someone, even in, you know, even at the moment that you were being voted off, for her to have the grace to turn to the person that, at the very least, at that certain moment, she believes to be behind her blind side, and still give a hug, have that grace. It was really, really awesome to see.
Yeah.
So, Soda, we love you. Hope to see you in a future season, truly. Let's move along to some social media. Let's cruise through some social media here in our last few minutes on the pod.
Yes. So we do this thing called the Tribe is Posted. The first thing. So we've just shown it.
My mom.
I know. We had to talk. I needed to talk because when I think back to social media last season, and I heard Austin, you were coming on, I was like, hold on. We have to talk about the true social media star of 45, which was your mum.
I need to take notes from her. She is a social media wizard.
I have to ask, is your mum enjoying the season? I've seen tweets. And I love how she always brings it back to you.
I know. She loves the season. She's still, at first, she was like, it's hard watching this. Now you're not on it, blah, blah, blah. But she's loving it. She's watched since season 1, episode 1. So she's going to be watching until the show is off of air, which hopefully is not for a very, very long time. So she has fun, no matter the season.
Oh, we love Mama Austin. We just love her. But yes, going back onto the Tribe is Posted, we actually did 2 polls on our X account. And just so you guys know, got something for you. We'll be posting 2 different polls about on Friday. So you guys check out X, Survivor Now Pod, and we will have some opinions because we love to hear what you guys say. And the first one was thoughts on the immunity necklace. And we didn't have a lot of votes, but majority of people liked it. So because that was the big thing. I know there was the big, obviously we had the debates. We know that Matthew didn't like it because of the geckos, but he's not here to defend himself, so it's fine. And the other question we had, we kind of talked about it. It was the thoughts on the double tribal and how one person makes the jury. And it seems like we have a very mixed review. Like most people thought it kind of was a bit unfair. Some people think it makes things more intense, which I agree. And then a couple of people said, if done right, it could work. So I think it would be interesting to see what the fans come up with moving forward. But we just wanted to mention that because, we will have polls on X. So keep an eye out on those on Friday.
Come answer our polls. Come tell us what you think.
Please. I found some really funny tweets from Jem and Jess with Tim coming to Ponderosa. Jem kind of finally getting to have her little jabs back. But I think it was all cute and it was all nice. I find it funny that she somehow still managed to relate it back to Charlie. What's that one Taylor Swift song again? But yeah, I think I've really enjoyed. I don't know what you think if you've been looking at the kind of social medias as well, Austin. The pre-jury have really kind of given each person some flowers on social media as they've come in, which I've really liked. It's been really nice to see.
Yeah, I haven't been on Twitter too much, but I can't tell. Do they love each other? Do they hate each other? I don't know. You know, we've got a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's a lot of passive aggressive, but there's a humor to it.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
you can tell they all got along, and you can I like that, like, because we saw it with Jem last episode with Mariah, same with Jess, and I like that that they're giving each person that moment. So I always like to highlight this, just because I think the pre-jury has been.
Yeah, I just think I want to call something out. And again, I'm sorry that I'm like almost obsessing over this, but with love, and I do love Jess. Jess, you're fantastic. Me and Jess actually follow each other on Instagram. She's fantastic. The fact that Jess, who is the second person voted off, is like at Ponderosa with Tim, someone who like got this far in the game, almost breaks my brain. Like it feels like they they should have already been on their pre-jury trip at this point. But yes, Ollie, it is really nice to see that like every single person that sort of comes in is getting seemingly a warm welcome from the people that are in Ponderosa. But to your point, Austin, you then listen to like Gordon Holmes's interviews where they do the word association. And I think that every single person has had at least one could be possibly seen as negative word for at least one person that they played with so far, which has not been the case every season. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, is this what's going on here?
That's why you love Survivor. You know, you never know what you're going to get when you throw 18 strangers onto an island. Like
literally. What do we got next?
And then the last thing to kind of top it all off, I think, is it was just a couple of funny moments. We see kind of Q bring in the humor, which I think was we did delve on it, and I think I'm glad to see this from Q because it was funny. Like that whole challenge was really fun, and it's like he said, if you're not having fun, what are you doing? And I think it was a good testament to kind of be like, remember you're there. Like Austin knows. Jealous that you are there, so make the most of it. And Ben's social medias have always been fun to see, and I liked that this after this episode we saw kind of like he was thanking everyone and he was kind of showing his personal side with his guitar as always. But yeah, I always say like just have a look at their social medias because people, you see the person. We see the player on the show, but you really see the person on their social media, and you see that all of these people have such an amazing heart. So yeah, I think that is the last one. We didn't have really much. There was other things we had. We had more. Oh yes, we had Kenzie and Maria just giving them their flowers one more time. Because I think, again, this was a very special moment for both of them. Like you see there with Kenzie, I don't even have words, but thank you and I love you all. We're doing it. Because again, she mentioned like she didn't think she would win this. And do we agree? Does red look good on both of them? Do we see them getting? I
totally agree. The necklaces look better on the person than they do on the stand. They look great.
Definitely.
All right, I think that is it.
All right, Austin. We want to give a huge thank you to you for joining us on this.
Thank you both. Thank you all.
I've got something for you, truly. Any last words? Where can folks find you?
Oh man, I mean, I've got Instagram, I've got the Twitter, and I have a YouTube channel. You can check that out. I did a Q&A like a month and a half ago with Drew and Jake. It's so funny. So check that out. But yeah, I think that's it.
There we go. There we go. And Ollie, as always, thank you. And until next week's, y'all, have a blast. We'll have something for you right here. See ya.